Hi everyone, this is a short NumPy arrays tutorial for beginners. In this tutorial, we'll cover what is NumPy, what's a NumPy array, how to index and slice NumPy arrays, and when to use NumPy arrays, and conversely, when to use lists in Python. There are many other very good tutorials on NumPy online on YouTube and in blog posts, so I'd highly recommend reading through and watching some other ones to really get a feel of the breadth of and functionality of the NumPy module. So what is NumPy? NumPy stands for Numerical Python. It's a core scientific package, and you'll probably use it a lot. You'll definitely use it a lot if you're using Python, pretty much, in science. It's easy and fast. We basically use NumPy arrays for images. So most images, how you deal with them in Python is actually via NumPy arrays, using for storing numbers and things like this and other calculations. It's not internal to Python, so we have to actually import it, right? And this just means that we need to install it with pip. And if you're not sure what that means, then check out the installation video and the command prompt and installing things with pip video. Yeah. So essentially, we import NumPy and the module, and we give it a shorthand name. And this is what this notation means as NP. So essentially, we can access all of NumPy's functionality by typing np dot and then whatever function you want to use from NumPy, right? And this is something I would highly recommend doing all the time, but especially as a beginner, is to print out what exactly is this NP, you know, because otherwise it's this kind of ephemeral thing. It's like, ooh, it's NumPy. But if we run this, you'll see it just says it outputs module NumPy, and it's essentially just in a folder, right? So if you actually go to this folder, or it'll be different on your computer, of course, you go into your site packages module, go into folder, go into NumPy, and it's basically initialized in some file, and that just imports other modules within NumPy, right? So it's literally just a file on in your computer, yeah, or several files in your computer, yeah, just some Python files. So let's look at NumPy arrays, right? So let's make a NumPy array. We could use NumPy's internal functionality to create an array. For example, here, this is just an array of zeros. So it's np dot zeros, and then some brackets for the function, or in this case, a method. And we can see we put in 3 here. And what will this give you? Well, you can actually just see it gives you an array of length 3. Yeah. np dot ones will give you ones instead of zeros. What if we want a 2-dimensional array? So these were just 1-dimensional arrays. Well, 2-dimensional arrays, we just change the shape. We just put it in some brackets here within the brackets. So notice that there's 2 brackets on each side. And this is a 2x3 array, right? So if you run that, we can see we get a 2x3 array. This array in Python, or how they format the axes, is y by x, right? So x is, I've written it here, x is always the last axis in NumPy, right? So this is y by x, so 2x3, yeah? What if you want a 3 or 4-dimensional array, for example, or a 10-dimensional array? Well, 3-dimensional array, you would just put in 2x2x3. So this is z has 2, y has 2, and x has 3 rather dimensions, yeah? And of course, a 4-dimensional array, you start getting a bit more complicated and stop being able to really visualize what's going on. But of course, we could just keep adding things here and print that out, and we get these mad arrays. Yeah, but you can see that you can just expand it to many different dimensions. Yeah. So we can also, that's how you basically make some NumPy arrays using NumPy. You can also make NumPy arrays from other Python objects like lists. So here we have a simple list of numbers, and we set it equal to a variable, and this variable is just a list. We set that into this function here called numpy.array, and we set that equal to the array1 variable, print that out and see what we get. Well, we just get essentially what the list says, but it's an array. Yeah. We can index this array just like we can index lists. So if we get the 0th element, we should be getting 2. So we get 2. If we slice it, we started the first element, or 0 element, and go up to the 3 element, we should get 2, 3, 4. Yeah, because it's 0, 1, 2. Yeah. So if we run that, we get 2, 3, 4. Great. And it looks similar to list, as you can see, but it can do a lot of other very cool things, right? So if you have a list like we had here, and this is just our list from above, this 2, 3, 4, 8, 10. If you multiply these two lists together, or just multiply it by itself, if we run it, we actually get an error. You can't multiply a sequence by a non-integer of type list. So essentially this means that you're not allowed to multiply a list by a list. Yeah. However, we can do that with arrays, no problem. And remember, to do this, all we had to do was put the list inside this numpy.array. And now we can just multiply these two arrays together, which is essentially just multiplying the two lists together. You can see we get 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, etc. Yeah. We can also multiply a list with an array. Yeah. So we get the same thing. What about multiplying it against a single number? Well, what it'll actually do is it'll just multiply all the things in the array by this number, 8.33. And we can also do, we can also multiply by Booleans. So it'll run everything and multiply everything in the array by false in this case, right? So maybe if we multiply by true, we can see that we actually get the actual numbers. Yeah. And I have written here, NumPy is really good at working with Boolean masks, and check out things like numpy.where and all of these types of functions, right? NumPy has a lot of functionality and there's a lot to look at, right? We're only really touching the surface here, yeah. NumPy has also a very cool thing called like fancy indexing. So we were indexing above, for example, using like this, just like normal list or string indexing. But we also, in NumPy, can do a kind of multi-dimensional indexing, right? So we have a fake array here. This is a 2-dimensional array. It's just 3 by 4. If we print out this array, we get that exact thing. And we can do this type of notation, right? So we have a square brackets, which indicates that we are indexing. We have a slice, and we actually have 2 slices, right? But they're separated by a comma. But the first slice will operate on the first dimension, so that's y, and the second slice will operate on the second dimension, which is x. Yeah. So we go from 0 to 2 in the y dimension, which is 0 here down to the end, which is 2, so 0, 1, 2, and then it'll crop essentially in the x direction 1 to 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So it'll actually should get these 9 numbers here. Yeah. If I'm correct. Oh, I'm wrong. Sorry. Haha. It doesn't include the final index, right? So it doesn't include 4, 7, 1, 2, 5. Yeah, it just gets 3, 4, 5, and 1. Yeah. And a quick mention of when to use lists and arrays. So you should use lists when you want to gather objects together. You should use it for strings, numbers, lists, dictionaries, modules, whatever variables basically, or any type of data type you want, you can gather it in a list. NumPy's arrays should be used when you're dealing with numbers or Boolean values, right? When we want speed and when you're looking at image data and things like that, right? NumPy arrays are not designed to work with strings really, and other things like that, right? So really they're for numbers and for speed. Yeah, so that was a very quick introduction to NumPy and how to use NumPy and to get started with it. As I said, there's many more very good tutorials online, so please do check them out.